another team. He is an amazing manager.
Yeah, Ger, you'd have to say that, and you'd have to say, you know, when you have the players of the calibre, you know, Richie Hogan just in the 60th minute there, 2 balls over the bar from nothing, and that just to open the gap a little bit more, you know. Cody has done fantastic work altogether, and he has some fantastic players, great workers, and great scorers, and very, very clever players.
Well, he has some fantastic players, and one of them is Richie Hogan. He's now wearing a Waterford jersey, and he's talking with Joanne Cantwell.
Richie, congratulations, a great game today. Was that a slightly different sort of challenge for Kilkenny today?
Yeah, we just tried to play our own game for a lot of it, but I suppose everybody knows what kind of game Waterford play. They don't give away the ball, so we just, I mean, the tactic was just try not give them the ball in the first place. But I think we got the scores when we needed to, and it kind of just allowed us to pull away in the end.
How difficult was it getting those scores, particularly in the first half? You seem to struggle with the amount in the defence.
Yeah, we always kind of knew it was going to take us a few minutes to get used to it, and I suppose, look, we were maybe a bit anxious in the first half. I hit a couple of bad wides, and there was a few other times when lads had a bit of space, and maybe a little bit of composure would have been a better option. But I think the goal was a big help after whatever it was, 15 minutes, and I kind of think that gave us a bit of confidence then, and we kind of didn't turn back from there.
Yeah, because even when Waterford kept coming at you, it seemed like that goal just always proved to be that cushion that you needed, didn't it?
I suppose we were very conscious not to let them ahead. A young team, brilliant confidence, brilliant hurlers, very similar to the Waterford teams down through the years, and you know, we were anxious not to let them ahead because we knew we wouldn't get it back.
We have Henry in studio there, and the one thing he was talking about when you do have that amount in the defence was how important it is to reach up and be able to catch the ball cleanly, like you and TJ in particular did today. Was that something that you had kind of thought about before going in, that you needed to be able to do?
Well, look, it's something that you have to do anyway, and I mean, just catching the ball is something that you learn when you're 12 years of age, and you know, it's the simple things. You know, Henry will probably tell you himself that it's the simple things that help the most out here. Catching, good striking, good first touch, you know, really makes a difference.
Well, it's got you to another All-Ireland final. Well done, Richie.
Thanks very much.
Another All-Ireland final for Richie Hogan. 5 points I think he got in that match as well. Anthony Daly, I met a couple of Waterford fans outside in the corridor there a few minutes ago, and they're shaking their heads and saying, after, same old, same old. It was in a way, I suppose. They came, they tried hard, but Kilkenny were just too good for them.
Yeah, they never gave up the fight, Michael, to be fair to them, as has been the case all year. Half-time, whatever the dynamic in there at half-time, there might have been a bit of excitability maybe, you know, that they were in this, we have it, and Kilkenny maybe were more composed in their dressing room and said, this is a dogfight, boys. 10 minutes now into the second half, let's kick on here. And I think they'd open a 5-point lead by the 8th minute of the second half, and that's composure, and that's hitting us. You know, when Waterford maybe were still living in the dressing room at half-time, Kilkenny were kicking on and saying, this is the time we can win it. And they stretched it out at that stage, and they held it. And again, I suppose beforehand we said Waterford may need a goal, like 18 points, 16 points, Munster final. There's not a huge difference, 21 points for Tip. They needed a bit more, and it just didn't come, and there was a lot of aimless ball in the second half, and they'll work on that. They'll winter on that. Derek is very clever, and he'll know he'll need to expand his team and his game for next year.
Well, actually, picking up on that, Henry Shefton, like Anthony said, for me, the second half, it was kind of like a slugfest, and you always felt Kilkenny would win that kind of a game.
Yeah, at half-time we were kind of, the goal was probably the difference between them, but I think actually it worked to Kilkenny's benefit. I'd say Brian was in there drilling into the forwards. We need to see more from the forwards, and we did see it. Ger Elwood got 4 points from playing in the second half. Richie got another 3 points. Killian Buckley came up and got a point. Michael Fennelly got a point. So it definitely, we'll comment on it. For the first 15 minutes, I know there was a lot of mistakes by Waterford, but the mistakes are coming from the intensity. Kilkenny definitely up for that spell. It was that period where they really were working them very hard. Waterford were losing some balls, and Kilkenny just got them over the bar then. And that was that because we had the goal of the cushion. You know, you can tick the scoreboard over fairly quickly by getting a couple of points, and I think that was the bit of difference. They upped the intensity, definitely. And I think, you know, people can't underestimate the 5-week break. You know, it just takes a bit of maybe to get the dirty diesel out, and they really kind of exploded then after half-time, and that was the difference. From then on, there was only one winner, to be honest.
Yeah, Ken McGrath, you were very animated in that second half, watching that and obviously hoping that your team were going to win. But as Henry said, sitting as a neutral looking at it, you could just see the game was slipping away from Waterford all the time.
Yeah, no, probably the first 10, 12, 15 minutes maybe after half time, we were in the game and you'd be a small bit excited what could happen. But the last 10 minutes petered out again, and there was only in the second half, you know. And I think we got a fair bit of results from going down the wings and playing the short ball. And I thought that's the game we probably should have sticking to the last 20 minutes. But we hit aimless balls, as Anthony said, and there was 2 and 3 Kilkenny lads around one player, and it was you knew the result of that long ball going in, and that was the shameful thing. Look, they tried very hard. It's been a great year for us, but still we lost another semi-final and lost fairly poorly in the last 10 minutes. You know, we kind of petered out, and we have to learn from it. I said, playing the top teams 16, 18 points won't win a game for you. You have to offer more going forward. I think that's what we have to learn on and build on it for next year. But look, not get too down about it. We've been here before. We'll have to redress what went wrong, but we have to move forward and we have to start getting more scores and offering more as a team going forward. You know?
Have you seen this year now, since the beginning of the year, the beginning of the league, have you seen that kind of progress in the team coming up to an All-Ireland semi-final?
Yeah, look, I suppose no one at the start of the year would give Waterford a hope even getting out of maybe 1B probably. We popped up, we won a league, it's only our second league in 30, 40 years, you know. These lads got a lot of experience, played some top games with big crowds, got the Ireland semi-final. You have to learn from it, you have to learn from your mistakes. To play we did the last 10 minutes is disappointing, but we'll have to redress it, go back with our clubs and go at it again next year and try and build on it. You know, you can't sit still. Other teams will pop back up again, the likes of Limerick, Clare. They won't wait in long grass forever again, you know. And Kilkenny are going nowhere, Tip are going nowhere, so you have to be on your game and you have to up it to a different level again to compete, you know.
But I think that last 10 minutes Ken has referenced to, what that is just that physical, the intensity of Kilkenny forward, it eventually kind of breaks you down. And like when you're getting hits and you're looking up and you know, in games up to now, they probably had that bit of time, bit of freedom the last 10 minutes. But at that stage, their energy was sapped, because if you're constantly getting those hits, that'll sap the energy out of you, and you're just, your mind, everything kind of goes, and you just, I want to get rid of the ball, I don't want to use tactics here now or sweepers.
Even though, having said that, Henry, there was a few of the Kilkenny fellas absolutely out in their feet as well at the end, and they need a few weeks good training. Mick Finlay did a pile of work. He's massively important, but he looked very leggy near the end, and he has missed so much training. We know, just not through any fault of his own. Owen Larkin as well, to me, just looked leggy today. Colin Finlay never got going. How Walter Walsh stayed on the field the 66 minutes is a bit of a mystery to me. I'm not, you know, John Power there on the line. But Brian seems to be able to get away with this. You know, most managers would be getting. But sure, once he gets the result, I suppose that's all that counts, and he does it all the time. And incredible man.
Hey, there's no question about that. All right, we have another short break to take here on the programme. But before we go to the break, here comes a chance for you to win a superb trip to Australia.
Points in it in the end. How pleased are you with the performance?
I look very pleased, Joanne. Obviously, you know, it was a real tough game to win. It was a hard game from start to finish. You know, 6 points in the end, but at any stage, a small break around our goal and end up in the back of the net, and we're back to nothing again. You know, we kept getting a couple of points ahead, but they kept pulling us back all the time. They're a serious team, and we had to play really well to kind of withstand the challenge first of all, and then to try and eke out a victory.
Well, since you brought up that, you know, a small break around your goal can make a difference, tell us about the role of Paul Murphy today and how big a part the role he played in the win.
Yeah, well, it wasn't particularly a pre-planned role, to be honest about it at all. You know, I mean, it's the way the game panned out, because we had no idea what, if we had gone other matches, the potential for it to happen was there, but we couldn't be sure that was going to happen. And you know, Paul has the ability to do that. But I think some of the other backs have the ability as well. As it turned out, Paul became a free man, and you know, he did pick up a huge amount of ball.
It did, and it helped snuff out the main threat in Maurice Shanahan at times as well, and Killian Buckley, of course, played a huge role as well.
Did indeed, yeah. But I think everybody has a team right throughout the team. You know, it was a question of everybody applying themselves and putting in the work right throughout the field. And you know, from goalkeeper, you know, whose handling was magnificent, I thought today as well, right up the corner forward, right throughout the field. You know, and we had chances, we had wides, they had a couple of wides, but it was a question of just keeping it going really, and just trusting the lads out there, and you know, they're worth trusting.
In the first half up front, you did seem to take a while to get into it. What was the difference between the first half and the second half?
Probably we opened it up a bit more in the second half. You know, TJ came out the field, I suppose, and it did create a bit more space as well. And that, but just to make the games go. I mean, the game lasts for a long time. You know, 72 or 3 minutes, and the first 35 minutes can be, you know, checking each other out and going. And fellas are very fresh at that stage as well. But fellas begin to get the game takes a bit out of fellas and that, and the game gets stretched, and it's a question of just keeping your composure, I suppose, really, and getting on with it. And it's an instinctive game, and you have to trust the fellas who are out there to use their instinct. And I thought that we did it very well.
Does it help though the fact that so many of your lads have been here, done that, and been on this stage as well?
Yeah, I suppose obviously it might help, but it mightn't help either. There's no guarantees because you got to do it on the field, regardless of how many times you've been out there or how many times you haven't been out there. You've got to get out there and try to know what this is about. You never know what it's about. If you get complacent like that, you'll soon find out you don't know.
Well, if it's another All-Ireland final, well done, Brian.
Thanks, John.
It most certainly is. Interesting that Brian Cody said a couple of times in that interview, Henry, that you've got to trust the guys when they get out in the field. And that's very true as well, because you can lay down all the systems, all the plans, but fellas have to make up their own minds on the field sometimes.
Yeah, I think it's trust, and I actually have written it down. He said it about 4 times during the interview, and it's belief as well. Like, that's why he doesn't talk about retirements or players gone past or injured players. He just believes in those players, and I suppose the players give it back to him. As well as that, you could see by him, I'd say come half time, he knew they needed to up it, and it definitely instilled that in them. We need to open up, bringing TJ out, freed up, because with Tyke the Burke sitting back in front of him, it was probably nullifying TJ a little bit. But TJ, he didn't score as much as he scored in the first half, actually in the second half, but the amount of balls he won, hand past the players, won frees, he was just magnificent again. And Ger Elwood then went out the field as well, and he really opened up in the second half. OK,
let's get the thoughts of the Waterford manager, Derek McGrath. He's with Joanne now.
Derek, hard luck today. You hung in there for so long. What was the difference, do you think, that allowed Kilkenny to be able to pull away?
I'd say probably just generally a better team. I know it's probably not the simple analogy you want, but probably just a little bit further down the road than us in terms of experience and just hurling nous, if you like, and richly deserving winners, I have to say.
Is it, by that do you mean by having the players on the field who are able to adapt as they go along?
Yeah, look, I think, A, the age profile of the team, and B, I suppose the level of experience that's there has been All-Ireland champions, etc. We're in the game an awful long time, but look, Kilkenny are a very hardened team and serious players, and as I said, I often feel that when you lose a game, it's probably because the other team is better than so I think we have to acknowledge that,
There was no sign, though, of your team being overawed or anything, particularly in the first half. They didn't look like they were afraid coming up against this great side.
No, but sure, I think fear really comes into it when you approach any game. I think you're just trying to do your best. I know it sounds very old-fashioned to say that, but fellas are just doing their best. And I said beforehand that they were buzzing for the game, and they were. And I think their effort was absolutely total. And I'd have to have great pride in the lads for sustaining that effort right to the final whistle, if you like. But look, we'll hope to regroup and come back next year. But there's certainly no guarantees that. A lot of people probably, the perception is that we're a very young squad and we'll be back next year, but you have to take your chances when they come, and unfortunately we didn't take ours.
Hungen, you said they kept going to the final whistle. They did drop off quite a bit though towards the last maybe 10 minutes or so, didn't they?
Yeah, I think the level of the sustainability of the effort was such against Kilkenny. It's as much to do with the opposition you're playing as anything else. I think they were giving it everything, and sometimes that can look, it doesn't mirror well, if you like. It looks as if you're just dropping off. But I think, look, Kilkenny were just deserving winners. We'd have to acknowledge that first and foremost.
And just finally, from what you said a moment ago, it sounds like this you're trying to push it into your players. This is just a first step on a long journey, is it?
Yeah, it is. But I will kind of put the caveat there. I suppose that there's no guarantees in hurling. I think you'll have a hungry Clare, Cork, Limerick, Wexford back next year. I think we had a certain amount of momentum built up by the run we're on this year. So there's certainly no guarantees that we'll be back. And in terms of the whole approach next year, it's the sustainability of trying to do what we did in the winter last year is very difficult.
Well, we've enjoyed watching you. Thanks very much, Derek.
Thank you.
Well, I think an honest assessment of the game there from Derek McGrath. And the thing about it is, when it boils down to it, Anthony, that when you're against a team like Kilkenny, I noticed one thing where Kilkenny were 2 points up in them, and it was still very tight in the second half. It was still there in the boiling point. But within a minute, Kilkenny had turned 2 points into 4 points. And then the gap starts to get bigger.
Yeah, and that's the mantra, they don't do panic, really, they hurl away. And even the fellas that are not going so good, Colin Finlay had a good game, Jet, was willing to get in there, but TJ, poor clearance from Barry Coughlin, mistake, didn't make all that many, the tough day on TJ, I suppose, but again, we see a puck out, Killian Buckley reads it better than anyone, straight back over the bar with return, and they're murdering scores if you're the underdogs and you're trying to. You need all those little breaks going for you instead of against you, and then when they go against you, it's like nearly 2 points when they come against you.
Saps the energy out of you.
Yeah, and what you're also aware of, Ken, is you're looking at how hard Waterford are trying to dig out the scores, and then Kilkenny come down and pop 2.
I suppose that's when you're an underdog and you're fighting for every ball you can get or every second on the ball. And as Derek was honest there, and he's been great all year and straight up what he's saying. You can gloss it over any way you like. Kilkenny were a better team than us today, but it's very early stages in development of this.
Yeah,
team.
yeah.
So we have to learn from it. As Henry was saying early on, sometimes you can look tired at the end and look maybe worn out. That's from just constant harassing from Kilkenny trying to get that ball and be free. And that's what happened the last 10 minutes. I suppose that's probably glossed over maybe our full season, how we played and stuff. But no, look, they'll be back now in all fairness, you know.
Richie Hogan was making the point in the interview with Joanne earlier on there, Henry, that Kilkenny didn't want to give Waterford the lead, say, going in at half-time, because they knew that they would obviously feed on that. The goal, actually, in the first half, TJ Reid's goal, kept Kilkenny just with their noses in front.
Yeah, it was nipper tuck, and as I said, we showed it at half-time. It was just a direct long ball, and I suppose many players in the country can do this, but he shielded Ty de Burke. It kind of took the 2 Waterford players out. He wanted this ball to go in behind him. The space was in behind him. His vision, his awareness, and just wanted, you know, he's just done an awful lot of work on his body, his physical being in the last couple of years. And you look, just once there was no question he was going to finish at bottom corner.
To defend him was a bit naive as well, Henry. Like, maybe spoken like a defender here now.
Yeah.
But, you know, I mean, one of the 2 of them should have stood off. The 2 of them went up with him, and no better man to expose that situation. I mean, fairness to him, you have to give him the credit. But I think if the boys watch that again, they'll say, "Oh
But
God."
I think that's something you learn maybe 13, 14,
2
one
young
man
players.
up and one man behind. But look,
Well, we were comparing the heads at half-time between Maurice Shanahan and TJ Reid, so just to kind of update you on how that went as the game progressed and the final analysis on those 2 players. But as I said, at half-time, obviously 2 men with important roles to play during that game. So that's what the stats say.
No, I think the biggest stat for me there is the possessions. Morris had 6 times, TJ had the ball in his hand 14 times.
Yes.
And you can imagine how many scores actually he created, and that was the difference, and that's why he is running.
Completed passes 8.
He's just completely in the top of his game, and he's playing with such confidence. Like, he's turned 27s, he's in the peak of his power now. I've seen it coming over the last few years, and I just can't speak highly enough of him. I'm delighted that he's putting in the performance he is so far this year.
Anthony, there's 3 left.
3 left, Mike. Yeah, where do these summers go? You know,
I know.
Maybe it's the older I'm getting, but yeah, they seem to fly. And yeah, we're looking forward to a ripper next week. And you know, everybody thought, I suppose, a done deal maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago that we were looking at a Kilkenny tip final, but Galway's performance against Cork, I think, has put everybody sitting up and taking notice here. I mean, they showed a new expansion to their game that day that I think will have worried a lot of tip fans. And I'd find that one hard to call next week. It's very much 50-50.
Well, Kilkenny, obviously, Henry, are used to facing Galway and Tip in big matches. I won't ask you who you'd prefer at this stage, but next Sunday should be another keen game.
Yeah, I think it has, and Anthony hit the nail on the head. I think Galway's performance, Cork were very poor, but Galway played like I suppose we expect them. They can play on their day. Tip have been very good, very quiet down around Kilkenny. We are not hearing too much from the Tip lads at all. So they're really trying to build, and they've been very impressive so far this year. But it has the makings of a great game, and I think the Hurling Championship was crying out for a big game, and I suppose we need an underdog.
As well, didn't quite work. I hope you enjoyed your day on the Sunday game.
I enjoyed it. Pity about the result, but look, they gave everything. Last 10 minutes probably ran out of steam, but they gave everything, and they're a young team, they'll be back, you know. So look, it was a decent enough game. Hopefully next week with more open scoring game. I think both teams have great forwards and forwards in their locker, especially, you know, and it could be a high scoring game, and hopefully the semi-final and final will be good and finish off the championship well, you know.
Well, that one's one for another day, but Kilkenny have indeed booked their place in the 2015 final, and naturally now are a step closer to Hurling's most prestigious prize, the Liam McCarthy Cup. My thanks to Henry, to Anthony, and our very special guest here today, to Ken McGrath. As always, don't forget to join Des and the team later on. That's for the Sunday game highlights with Fermanagh boss Pete McGrath as one of his guests in studio. We will see you back here in Croke Park next Sunday. Until then, take care.
And this year, Eddie Brennan, what's this? 14 out of 17 All-Ireland finals for Brian Cody and Kilkenny.
Yeah, it's a ferocious stat, really. I think up for the match, you might have to get Rackard or Fan Larkin or a few of them to do it for you, Des. This year give you a break. But
is it ever going to stop?
No, I mean that's the worrying thing, because I think you know, Brian has made a career choice as well.
Brian Cody.
Yeah, he's focusing on the hurling big time now, because as you may have heard, he retired from the teaching this year. So
he's taking it seriously now, is he?
Yeah, he's going to take it very serious from here on in. But look, I suppose what it reflects really is, again, his ability ability. And look, I was part of the team that was heaped with praise because of Brian Cody, but certainly what, for me, is, again, to reiterate, his greatest achievement is he's able to park up previous years and focus a bunch of guys, bring in a few new lads, dangle the carrot to a couple of guys, reward them when they show a bit of promise and they're in there, you know, and you say Jerry Aylward, Shane Pendergast today, new guys coming through, Killian Buckley really bedding down, and the two boys up front, they're just, they're, you know, running the show really.
No doubt they deserved it, but one element of the match, it perhaps lacks some of the drama that we'd normally associate with Battles of Neighbours. Is the system starting to dominate here too much, Ger?
Well, I suppose, you know, people are complaining it hasn't the cut and thrust or the kind of spontaneity that it did have in the past. But nevertheless, I find it intriguing. I like, you know, I would prefer the other game, right? Yeah. But we have to remember, like, in the last 6 or 7 years, we had some of the greatest games of all time. You know, the 2009, 2010 finals. Last year's drawn game was probably one of the greatest ever. Yeah. I thought the replay was brilliant as well. It's just, I suppose, with the sweepers, you know. But I am convinced that this is a phase they were going through. You remember when there were sweepers in soccer, everybody had to have a sweeper. Now, if a soccer manager came out with a sweeper, they'd say he was a Neanderthal. You know, it's gone that way. And what is very interesting, today's game in the second half, the sweeper was cast aside, really. You know, he was eliminated from have any importance in the game. And the very same thing happened with Galway and Cork. So I think, you know, it worked for a while, but will it last, the sweeper? And I think eventually we'll go back to very much like what we had before, but still a bit more method in it than there was then.
Right, the old man and man. What do you make of it, Donald?
Yeah, well, I suppose, look, it's a natural evolution of sport. I suppose George spoke about soccer there. Soccer started off 4-4-2, was get the ball up to the big man and him knock it down. Gaelic football was a bit like that. It was catch and kick. Hurling was, you know, strike the ball as long as you can. Now all those sports, be they soccer and Gaelic football, they're all becoming very fluid. So it's a natural evolution. I'm delighted to hear Jory was listening to him talking about it today. And, you know, I think the line he made was that it mightn't have been as absorbing as the games that we've seen over the last couple of years, but you still felt it was still intriguing, and that's exactly the same way I feel.
One of the positives was Kilkenny's use of the ball, Ger.
Well, yeah, because in the first half, you know, they wouldn't have been happy with the way they used the ball, or they wouldn't have been happy with their work rate. But right after half-time, things changed completely. And I think the aim was, the Burka had been very influential in that first 20-25 minutes. They wanted to take him out of the game. So they upped the work rate, and they played more ball down the wings, more diagonal ball. And the like of these rucks, you know, Waterford, you know, made a habit of winning these, especially in Munster. Nearly all of these they won in Munster. Now, very bad clearance here from the full-back, but look at the skill. Look at the absolute skill. The pick-up there from TJ Reid. And just the tiny little space he had to put it over the bar. All of this comes from the better work rate which they had. Now, they are Killian Buckley, a brilliant ball down along the line to Jerry Aylward. This is Manor, who was playing at number 13, and he's off over at the far side of the field. Now, this is probably the best bit of play of the whole day, because it shows people using their head, looking up. Look at Richie Hogan when he gets it. He looks up across the field. Now he overhits it. Now you see Pádraig Welsh going for it, but as he's going for it, he too is looking to see who is coming to support him. He passes it on to Owen Larkin. Now, as Owen Larkin gets it, look at the two that are with the circle around them. Who are they? The two full-backs passing the halfway line. You know, Shane Pendergast and Paul Murphy. He has all the time in the world. He puts it over the bar. You know, Waterford, you never saw passage a play like that from Waterford. So Kilkenny using their experience, but above all using their head, you know, and using the ball really well.
And I think that's a perfect example of evolution. A couple of years ago, if Kilkenny player hit the ball backwards, I don't think that, you know, it wouldn't have been a very common sight. So
but I think it probably comes from the preparation too. I mean, your homework is that they're sitting somebody there on the edge of the D, so we have to work it across or work it down the channels. And that's, as we've spoken about this at length, about how to get around the sweeper. And that's probably one way, is that you don't force it, look for the options, and they had plenty of support.
Yeah, because the Burka had so many possessions in the first half. You know, he was very, very strong in the first half. Second half, he was out of the game completely.
In contrast, Waterford probably, they were more predictable. I mean, I know they have this set up where lads drop back, but it meant that in attack they was a bit hollow.
Yeah, well, we'll go into this as well. There's 2 points of this, I suppose, and one is Jamie Byrne, you know, in his role that he has played all year. But I think today what we've seen from Waterford was an awful lot of Route 1 ball, and I spoke about my sympathy for Maurice Shannon playing that role, and how difficult it could be when there's numbers over on you. But you can see there they're
dropping short.
Yeah, they're making runs, but like, I know as a forward, when you break that initial second, the ball has to come, and what was happening more often than not was it wasn't coming in at the right trajectory, it wasn't coming at that specific moment in time when it needs to go, and almost it was just allowing the defence to get composed. But just even one of the things that we looked at when we're pouring over the tapes there tonight, there was 15 balls that I counted at Waterford throughout this match that went straight route one down the middle into the Kilkenny danger zone, which yielded 4 points. So that's 4 points out of 15 balls to the edge of the square, which tells a kind of a story in itself.
But Maurice Shanahan kind of was having to deal with 2 men. In fairness.
It's a very difficult role, one I wouldn't like to embrace. And even another stat was that Waterford had 8 attempts at points that fell short and allowed Owen Murphy to counteract. So with that in mind, I suppose it's a little bit of experience maybe that they'll have to look at that for the next time, that where Waterford were quite measured in their build-up because of the system they play. Instead, today we've seen them go very direct with an awful lot of ball, and I think Ger spoke about this long before I was involved here, Don Logue, about Kilkenny's aerial strengths, and that hasn't gone away, and that's a constant with Kilkenny.
And it's the one place where they need to develop, isn't it? They played much like that even in the league final. Got an awful lot of ball into the full forward line, coming out as fast as it's going in, and we were all saying there, that's the final piece of the jigsaw for Waterford, and it's something that they haven't got right yet. But I mean, this is only phase 1 really for them, It's a bit like Donegal in 2011. This is only phase 1, but they need to be better offensively than they are at the moment if they want to progress.
Okay. And that's the price you pay for that type of system, Des, that, if you are going to crowd the middle third and your defence, you are depending on your forward being capable of winning ball. And the most important thing when you're setting up a system is that you get your defence right at the start, and they've done that.
But you have a really interesting piece on this, because while they did have so many bodies back, at times maybe it wasn't as effective as it should be, and you chose Richie Hogan to...
That's right, so we've spoken about Richie Hogan a good few times here. Richie, one of the best, if not the best players in the game, and there was a lot of talk, and we've highlighted it before, where we feel that he should be marked by a man marker, and today if you look at him here, the 2 central characters in this piece that we're going to show is De Burke and Barron, and for some reason today they didn't seem to get their marking right, and time again we saw this image where Richie was finding himself in loads of space. Now with a player like that, that's not what you want to do. And Jory, you pointed out this there.
The 2 of us are watching the game from the canal, and we looked up along the field and we said, my God, what are Waterford doing? 1 minute De Burke was marking him, another minute Barron was marking him. Now look here, the 2 of them are sitting back here, and there's another man marking, but what's he do? He leaves him there. The best hurler in Ireland, the most dangerous forward in Ireland, is left totally on his own, 50 yards from the goal, and 90% of the people going to Croke Park today were saying, who's going to be marking Richie Hogan? At that stage, nobody.
And probably the best example here, you see nobody tracking him. If you had a man marker on him, you'd be telling him, you just have to stick with him wherever he goes. So he puts the ball over the bar again, and probably De Burke and Barron won't, be too overly happy with us tonight, showing him be in this position again. Look at this, Richie, look at the amount of space that he has. And the key thing when you're playing a sweeper is that very often, I'd see it when I was playing in goals, you could get caught that nobody would actually mark the man, that both people would think that the other guy is covering.
Right.
And almost to prove our point here, Des, look at the space that he has. The 2 lads are well off him again, and he puts the ball over from almost a standing position. So this is not something we just came up with today. We've been saying it for a long while. It looks like you need to put a man marker on that guy. And Tipperary or Galway, whoever's in the All-Ireland final, will have to seriously
consider it. But you highlighted
it.
that against Galway, the space he had. I mean, are you suggesting effectively a football cornerback type marking job? In other words,
well, just a man marker. A man marker
type. And Michael Murphy, but not to that extreme, but somebody who's going to stay with him, not as naive as that.
Because like a man marker, without doubt, a man marker is a man marker. You look at, you talk about Jackie Tyrrell a couple of years ago with Lark Corbett, where he's just his detail for today is to nullify his influence on the match. But you're dealing with one of the most intelligent guys of all time. I mean, he's phenomenal. I was fortunate enough to see him come into the Kilkenny setup.
You nurtured him.
His brain, I passed off a bit of experience to him, Des, in fairness. But no, he is a seriously intelligent fella. Brilliant peripheral vision, which is something that maybe a lot of people don't see. He sees an awful lot of things behind him. He has great balance, very strong, and he was carrying an injury coming into today too. We took a serious knock 2 weeks ago, so he's a hardy little root as well. He's not able to. He's not afraid to mix it.
But Don Logue's point is the others have that vision as well and keep an eye. Let's go back to the point you made though, Eddie, about winning their own ball. And how Kilkenny still have that? Yeah,
this was something that was again, as I would say, a foundation of Kilkenny and Brian Cody. It's part of his ethos, really. We have here, a nice scrum, the smallest man in the scrum just plucks it out of the sky with, you know, not worried about the collision of bodies there. You know, I mean, simplicity of the, you know, of the finest, really. And then Michael Fennelly, this was the result of a long ball into the water, into the Kilkenny square, which they mopped up. You have a lot of Waterford bodies. I mean, you talk about the system there, it's gone over the defensive unit where the bodies are, but a bit of a breakdown in communication here, really. I think that this is Tadhg de Búrca's to stay away from, not to go in there. Let the man that's marking TJ Reid go with him. And maybe I felt Stephen O'Keefe could have...
Was there a foul?
Was there a foul? No, there wasn't. I think TJ was being well marshalled. But look at this. The helmet came down into his face, blurred his vision somewhat, or was going to impede him, and he had the presence of mind to flick it up. But here we have it again. You know, TJ coming along from maybe 10-15 yards away from Tadhg de Búrca, gets in a brilliant hook, and none other than Richie Hogan comes along, gets off the ground, up between two fellas, plucks it and straight over the bar. And this is something that, you know, we'd have worked on a bit in training, and there's no magic formula from Brian as regards that. He just demands that of his players, and this is a brilliant example, I think, of the cleverness. And if you watch Jerry Aylward here, the timing of his run, cuts inside off the shoulder and whips it off the defender just as he's about to clear that ball. 5 or 6 Waterford lads, they look to be in control, and he cuts inside. Yeah. And it's, you know, you talk about coaching fellas and young lads. I mean, there's one thing getting to the scrum and getting to the breaks, but getting there with purpose and timing of the run. I mean, he came in on the blind side there, 3 or 4 Waterford lads standing, and when you're coming in momentum and the ball pops up like that, it's very hard to get after a fella and stop that.
You know, I have a total bee in my bonnet about this winning your own ball. It's like a broken record at this stage, because I think there's brilliant coaching going on all over the country, in most counties, at underage level, development squads and all that. But a lot of the systems are designed to absolve players of the responsibility of winning their own ball. That is one thing. And that is a cornerstone of Brian Cody's philosophy. Yeah. Every player, from corner back to corner forward, must win his own ball. Even in your heyday, Eddie, a lot of people, a lot of players, when the backs got the ball, Tommy Welsh, JJ, they just banged it up towards the corner forward.
Are you saying they're working on fancy skills now rather than the hard?
They're very good at that. They're very good at working at the skills. They're very good at working in their system, getting the ball to the corner back and all of that. Now, I saw it carried to a real extreme in the under-21 final in Linus. And, you know, everybody knows the regard I have for the lads in charge of Clare and the other ones. They're brilliant lads. But Clare were 2 points down, the wind behind them. And the goalie couldn't puck the ball long because there was no one else to win the ball. So what did he do? He pucks it to the corner back. He goes out to wing back. He passes to the midfielder. Next thing, the midfielder gets a shoulder, ball over the line ball to Limerick. Why? Because they have nobody who can win their own ball. It's not being coached into them to win their own ball. It's tough, and it takes a lot. It takes a lot of punishment.
Hang on, let him get over Clare's defeat against Limerick.
No, it's not that. No.
I'd agree with your point, and you can coach anything, but it also suggests that the Kilkenny forwards over the last number of years have had a greater natural ability to win their own ball than anybody else.
But where did they get that, Where did they get that?
But you could suggest that today, that Waterford's system wasn't too dissimilar to Kilkenny's, because that ball that TJ Reid won was him going up against 2 Waterford players. Whereas when we're looking here at all the points that, and the fair points that Eddie's making about all of the Route 1 ball that Waterford were hitting into their own attack, when they were facing 2 Kilkenny defenders, they were finding it extremely hard to win.
OK, let me bring this up. At half-time, Waterford were still absolutely in it. It was 1-9 to 10 points for Kilkenny. But Jerry, you says this is where it's going to be decided now.
At half-time, I'd say Waterford were happy. But Brian Cody wasn't happy. You know, he wasn't happy the way his forwards were playing, apart from Reid and Hogan. Yeah. And at the start of the second half, Kilkenny came out and they were a completely changed outfit mentally. You know, they tore into the game straight away. Waterford was still inside in the dressing room. You know, Walter Welsh completely loose here in the first 2 minutes of the second half, or first minute of the second half. That's very unusual. Now here again, there were 2 points up. Here again, Tadhg de Búrca. You see the difference in the work rate. Richie Hogan, look at that foot. Brilliant footwork. Now there's a free into Kilkenny. Now they're 3 points ahead. You know, next thing, ball comes in again. It should have been cleared. Colin Finlay missed it completely. But, you know, Waterford hadn't tuned in. Look at it, even Noel Connors, a great player. He just flakes at it. Out again to Jerry Aylward. Ball over the bar. So now, instead of being 2 points up, Kilkenny are 4 points up. They have seized the initiative. And once they seize the initiative, they never get back. But Waterford should know that, because everybody knows that first 10 minutes in the second half, especially when Brian Cody is in the dressing room, that is the time you really have to be on guard.
Very quickly, that piece you showed there, a lot of mistakes defensively. What's your stat there on
we had that 11 dispossessions by the Kilkenny forwards on Waterford players led to scores.
11 out of 22 scores.
And 4 of the frees that Kilkenny players won involved three or more opposition players, where they won the ball off 3 or 4 and got fouled by 3 or 4.
OK, we've talked a lot about Kilkenny, but it wasn't all doom and gloom. As Ger says, he thinks it's phase for Waterford. How did you see it?
Yeah, I'd agree with that, and I think it's very important of us to call out that you know, Waterford have had a good year. They only lost 2 out of 12 games. They won the league. They've blooded a lot of young players. They've got a really good system. They've got a smart manager. You can see all the players have bought into it. And this clip today highlighted what was good about Waterford. Fair play to Brian Gavin. Walter Welch was looking for a free there. He didn't give it to him. But what I see here is I see guys who are getting up to the intensity of championship, and you can build championship winning teams on this type of composure and physicality in the white heat of battle against Kilkenny in All-Ireland semi-final. And finished off, see they were supporting each other here. Austin Gleeson, look, you know, I was talking to 100 kids from Notre Dame today about hurling. It was the first time they were going to see hurling, and they were in Croke Park, and one of the players I said to watch out for was Austin Gleeson, and that bit of skill Waterford people should carry a lot of hope in their hearts about this team.
And they also should remember that the first time you play against Kilkenny, all those young lads, it can be a disillusioning experience. You know, their physicality, their intensity is something that you will not have met before. And remember, Waterford are coming out of Division 1B, so they haven't played Kilkenny before. The first time I ever played against Kilkenny was against Frank Cummins down in Nolan Park. He hit me a shoulder in the first 5 minutes. I can still feel it. So you can be sure a lot of those are feeling that kind of... They're saying tonight, God almighty, we never thought it was going to be like this. But now they're in Division 1, so they'll be playing them more often. And the more often they play them, the more they'll adjust to Kilkenny's style, just as Tipperary are doing. So there are reasons for them to be optimistic.
And we spoke about them needing more resources up front. One of the best players of the spring was Pádraig O'Mahony, and he's been missing.
All right, so they certainly owe their fans nothing anyway. They've had a good year, Waterford, so thanks for that. Right, those are the views of our panel. Let's get some reaction now from the two camps.
And it's all over, and Kilkenny have beat.
Backs were talking, the keeper was talking, so there was no point in trying to fix it when it wasn't broken, so we just left it that way through the match.
Ultimately, look, we're very disappointed. You know, we came up here with the intentions of winning, and unfortunately it wasn't to be today, but I suppose over the course of the year, you know, we've built a spirit, and I suppose a team that Derek has kind of given us a bit of responsibility ourselves to drive on and push on and be successful, you know, and I suppose we're very grateful for that.
I suppose, look, we were maybe a bit anxious in the first.
And they are the ultimate, you know, and it was fantastic, I suppose, for us to pitch yourself up against the best, you know, and I suppose, look, ultimately they won by 6 points in the end, and I suppose it's back to the Rome for us and get back in and regroup fairly soon, I suppose.
Well, calm heads are going to be required now on both sides.
It's a question of just keeping your composure, I suppose, really, and getting on with it. And, you know, it's an instinctive game, and you have to trust the fellas who are out there to use their instinct, and I thought that, you know, we did it very well.
I think the level of the sustainability of the effort was such against Kilkenny, it's as much...
We did it very well.
I think the level of the sustainability of the effort was such against Kilkenny, it's as much to do with the opposition you're playing as anything else. I think they were giving it everything.
There's a fantastic bunch of lads in that dressing room, you know, and as I said, they're bitterly disappointed, but look, it's kind of put our shoulder to the wheel and kind of get back out onto the field, you know, pretty soon, I suppose, and you know, look, trying to get more silverware is the ultimate objective for us, you know, when we get back in the field, whenever it may be.
Yeah, nice reflections there. It's time to name our man of the match, though, from this afternoon. Donlow, you have the nominees.
So the nominees are Dara Fifes, was outstanding for Waterford today in the half-back line. From Kilkenny, another half-back, Killian Buckley's getting better and better. I think he was nominated again the last day, and especially his use of possession is improving greatly. And then finally, TJ Reid, what can you say about him? Kilkenny have had outstanding forwards over the last number of years, great forwards, but it looks as if this guy could possibly surpass any of those greats the way he's going.
Even better than Eddie.
I taught him everything.
All right, then, 3 strong nominees. Who gets it?
Well, without a doubt, Des, because for once it was very difficult, because we haven't even mentioned the great Richie himself, you know, but I think, you know, for setting the tone from the very, very start, scoring that goal, scoring 2 points from play, as well as his free taking, but above all, for his unselfish work rate and his leadership that he showed throughout the game, we decided to go for TJ Reid.
Great, all right then. Congrats to TJ. Let's hear from him. He spoke to us after the game.
TJ, congratulations, a great game. It was a a kind of scoring performance first half from you, and it was more a sort of ball catching and possession game from you in the second half. Would that be a fair assessment?
I don't know. I suppose I have to look back and see it myself. But when you're playing, you're just playing for yourself and playing for the team, of course. You know, in the first half, it's very difficult to get the grips of Waterford's system because they play an extra man there and behind the ball the whole time. So it took us 10-15 minutes in the first half to get the grips of it. But we done okay. We coped well. A few scores in the first half were nice. Second half, missed a few silly points there, of course. But we overall we done well. The work rate was good. The spirit was good, so we're happy enough.
Happy enough. An All-Ireland final to look forward to. What are the plans for next Sunday?
We have a week with the clubs now, so games the weekend, and then of course we'll group on Sunday, I suppose, and sit down and watch the semi-finals between Galway and Tipperary.
We won't ask who you'll be shouting for. Well done, TJ, today. You are the Liberty Insurance RT Man of the Match, and we have Tom McElduff from Liberty TV.
Good luck.
Yeah, great stuff. Well done to TJ. Now